Welcome to Middle Fingers Up, the show where we hold our heads high and our middle fingers higher. I'm your host, Kieran McKay. Today we are welcoming Sunny Chopra, a South Asian who embodies courage and vulnerability in his quest for self-discovery and accountability. Through his own experiences, Sunny shares the complexities of his childhood upbringing, shining a light on how it influences his relationships as an adult. I like to think of him as a barrier breaker, someone who's paving the way for healing and growth in our community, particularly a place for our South Asian males. He also is a host of the South Asian Healing Podcast. And there, Sunny provides a safe haven for discussing thoughts and feelings we often keep hidden. His platform serves as a vital bridge connecting us to the conversations and insights we've longed for, but perhaps struggle to find. One of his main missions is to help us build better communication skills that hopefully can nurture healthier relationships. So today we're honored to have Sunny with us as he shares his wisdom and experiences on the challenges facing South Asian males today. So welcome, Sunny. Thank you for being here. How are you?
Hey, Karen. Wow, thank you. That was an awesome introduction. I really appreciate it, and I think anytime I hear like an introduction of myself, you get so caught up in your day to day that you sometimes forget what you're doing, right? So I really appreciate it. I really it makes me I'm kind of in a way lost for words right now because it took me back so much. So I appreciate you introducing me that way.
I think you should feel proud. I think you're very humble when you speak the way you do. So no wonder it takes you back a bit. And like you said, you don't think of yourself in that way day to day, but you're doing really good work out there. And I have a soft spot for our boys, for our males, those identify as males in our community. Like I told you, I'm a mom of 2 boys. I grew up raising my brother, being around guys. I have a dad. And we just see all sorts of generations going through so many things. And I think finally our generation's in a place where we can start to thrive and work on some of that history that our parents couldn't while they were surviving. So we need dudes like you out there doing what you're doing because we got to hit everyone from every angle, right? So I think that's great that you put yourself out there and you do that. Do you want to share anything else with the intro? Like anything that maybe I didn't mention, anything else that, you want others to know about you?
I think you really gave a really good introduction there, but I guess to add, and we might cover this as this episode goes on, but a lot of what I do and why I do it is from my personal experience, and I'll briefly touch on it right now, but I grew up in a single parent household. My parents divorced when I was 5. I got bullied when I was younger. I just really struggled to stand up for myself. And as I got older and I really developed this confidence and, really essentially doing the stuff I'm doing now, it was all through my own learning and experience. And then I realized that someone like me, quote unquote, an average person can achieve a great life, right? So it was just so much of me going through my own journey and realizing, okay, now I want to help other people. So it comes straight, I guess what I'm trying to say is comes straight from the heart when I'm helping others.
Well, I think it makes it more raw and more real and relatable. And I think we are all searching for that. And I think many of us are realizing, these role models or influencers that we've looked up to, whether they're celebrities, musicians, sports athletes, their stories we always look to and we're like so inspired by them, but we can't relate to them because we put them, in this whole different box of, they're like immortal. But when we have people like you out there that come out and talk about real life stuff, I think, you're sharing your individual struggles that are unique to you, but like on a macro, big collective level, it just helps our communities add more data, get more stories, get more
Mm-hmm.
stats out there for us, because we don't have a whole lot when we look up, what do we need as South Asians or as racialized people with mental health? There isn't a whole lot for us. So the more we talk about these real life things, I think we're actually helping our community on a bigger level. But it takes a lot to want to get out there and do that. And sometimes people think we have to be healed, to have all of our issues dealt with. And I think,
No,
the message, like,
never.
what do you want to say to that as you're like, what?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think like even for me, it's not one of those things like, for me, I went to school in university for human resources, right? That was my goal. I'm gonna, work in human resources. But was it my goal growing up to be a coach and motivational speaker and talk about my journey? No, it was just I went through it myself, just living as a human. And then I realized like, hey, there's other people out there. And it just kind of came very naturally because when I started to share my journey and experience with others, just like casually, there was just something inside me that like lit up, like this joy. And I'm like, this is such a great feeling, a feeling that I've never really experienced before. And then that's where I went into the coaching and stuff. But I think in terms of having everything healed, there was a point in my life when I was a coach early on where it was almost like a negative positive, right? Or I don't even know if that's the right term. It's basically like I was okay. I've talked about this with my therapist. I've healed this. I'm good to go. And this stuff will never bother me. I'm good. But it actually made things worse because a lot of these things that I was going through were still brewing inside
Yeah.
me, and it would make me harder. And although I was like, I am now an authentic person, I wasn't allowing myself to be an authentic person because I was still suppressing a lot of these things. Like, hey, I'm a coach now. I don't get angry. I don't get
Right.
upset. I don't like lose my mind. That's not me anymore.
Yeah.
But so I kind of went through that period, and I agree. We're all still, the great thing about life is you can continue to grow every single day until the day you die, and that's what I want to do. Like, I want my mind to continue to grow, and I know it will. There's things that I know now that I didn't know like 2 years ago, and even for me, like I reread a lot of my books that I have because, like, have you ever watched a movie like watching it as a kid and then watching it as an
Yeah.
adult? There's like a different perspective.
Yeah.
So I relate that to rereading books. So I might read a book on, like, there's a certain book I'm reading. I forgot the name now. Something to do with trauma. So I read that about 3 years ago, and I'm reading it again today. My perspective is going to be different because my
Hmm.
mind's changed. So yeah, I think it's a never-ending journey, but I think that's the beauty in it as well. Like it's a lifelong journey, and it's not so much about the destination. It's about the everyday growth that you can achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's well said. Like we sometimes grow up thinking we have to live in a box and follow this menu, go to school, go get a really good job, get married, have a kid, and then like you're happy. And
Hmm.
I think a lot of us are learning that's one way of finding happiness, but that's not everyone's way. And we have more angles, we have more dimensions to us. And so it's really cool to hear you say that growing is a long-term thing and it's not just something you accomplish because you read a book or you saw a therapist once or twice in your life. So let me ask you, on your podcast, you cover a range of topics, particularly from communication to emotional intelligence and like self-awareness. And
Hmm.
so can you share with us which aspect of personal growth maybe you find most challenging to address? Like what for you has been the most challenging to address?
The most challenging, I would say the hardest part for me was it is the thing I specialize most in, which is helping people have tough conversations, especially when it comes to, parents, aunts, uncles, and even like siblings. The people we love most, it's hard to have these conversations. And I know for me, it took me a lot of work and time to really stand up for myself and build boundaries with these individuals in my life. It was very, very tough, and I really struggled with it for a long time. So I would say that, and even today, like I still do. I like having these conversations? Hell no. I hate having tough conversations. I hate conflict. But I also know if I don't have it, if I don't have these conversations, I'm gonna resent the person. It's gonna ruin
Mhm.
the relationship. So I kind of have to like. It's not comfortable, but it's also you. It's almost like a necessary thing. Where I got to the point where I know I have to have these conversations if I want the relationship to continue to be fulfilling, even though it's not the best thing to talk about, it is something. But yeah, I would say that part was the toughest. If I compare it, like me being vulnerable and talking about my emotions, my struggles, and that, for me personally, the tough conversations part was the hardest part, not the part where I had to open up. Like, of course, that was a little uncomfortable just because the stigma of, there is of men opening up, but
Yeah.
that was more, it wasn't as difficult because I would say the image that had been built of me of being like, oh, that's poor little Sonny. He's a little kid. He needs help. It was really hard for me to shed that image and be taken seriously by everyone in my life.
How do you do that? Because I think, first of all, like what I hear you saying is when we're born into these roles we play with
Hmm.
our siblings, our parents, and whoever else is in our environment. I'm the oldest, so
Hmm.
we watch those TikTok videos what the oldest daughter is capable of in every household. You're welcome. So
Yeah.
we wear these roles and these hats and stuff. So you're growing up with this narrative of people telling you that you're this kid, you have these issues. How in there do you decide that that's not actually who I am? And how do you decide in that as you're growing up, oh, I got to also figure out for myself who I am?
Yeah. It was certainly a long process, and just to add a little more context to that, I am the youngest of three siblings, and the thing is, I do have a lot of. I'm very fortunate that I have a lot of family members around me who cared for me, but I think sometimes maybe it was too. I guess in a way, looking back on it, I was too sheltered, but I guess it's what they knew. As I got older, I have more empathy for the way people treated me, whether that was wrong or right. Like I see it now from their perspective. Anyhow, to answer the question, I think it's you have to step out of your zone of, like, I always tell people, like, your family is your household, or your family is not the Wikipedia of life,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you wanna, you might say to a family member, "Oh, I want to open a business," and your mom or dad might be like, "Shut up, that's stupid." Where they have no experience whatsoever about it, right?
Yeah.
So you gotta sometimes go outside of that zone and really ask other people out there. So I started to do that a lot. Like I said, I started reading books, so it gave me a new perspective that maybe I wasn't like grown up with. So like, wow, you can really live life this way. Wow, like someone like me who had no talent and no gifts, I can actually make a great life. I didn't know that.
Mm.
So it's because I had this mindset that was ingrained in me from my household, and I never really saw anything outside
Yeah.
of that. So it started with that, and then it just also started reading a lot of books. It really helped just like break that stigma of going to therapy. So then I went to therapy, and then worked through childhood trauma, and then just realizing, like, I don't have to have this role anymore. I can live a more authentic life. I can live the life I want to live. And that's where I started to really open up and have those tough conversations. And I would say that is kind of what
Yeah.
kind of made me realize that no, I don't have to live life this way.
I'm really excited to talk to you more about that as we
Hmm.
as we move forward because I think you hit the nail on the head. I don't have to live this way. I can find a way that works for me. And we grow up with what will people think and our immigrant
Yeah.
parents, that's their number one coping strategy of how to stay in line, how to follow. And it fucks with us as we grow up because we have to hide and tell secrets and we don't really know who we
Hmm.
are, a lot of us growing up,
Yeah.
because we don't really get to have those heart to hearts, those deep conversations with our parents. Maybe some of us did, but many of us didn't because our parents are on the go getting shit done for us. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to this conversation because I see the path that you've chosen for yourself, which is sort of taking responsibility for yourself along the way and saying, okay, like, what do I want to do with my life? I'm in charge of it. But I see a lot of Apane guys that didn't
Hmm.
necessarily have that route. And I see the mental health struggles now. And
Yeah.
almost this like, well, the quality of life goes down the drain because it's like, well, this is the way I am now, I guess. So I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to getting to that part with you. But I want to
Sure.
ask a little bit more about the podcast. So congrats, you started a podcast this year,
Thank you.
right?
Last year.
Last
So
year.
20, yeah, Jan 2023. So it's
January.
been about a year
Okay.
and a half.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
over. Okay. That's amazing. What was the story that led you to start South Asian Healing Podcast?
For me, it was kind of two things. One, I get to have conversations like, kind of how we're having now, right? And I'm already having these conversations just like casually. I was already having them. So that was the reason. And then it helped me build relationships with people within the community, right? So I'm like, hey, why not get it on a platform where people can listen to this and listen to topics that people don't really talk about, right? Because I wanted to expand my way of reaching out to people. Like I've done YouTube videos, I've done workshops online, in person, reels, videos, posts, and I'm like, what else can I do? Because people don't have time to watch, like sit there and watch a YouTube video, or they don't want to. Like for me, sometimes I struggle to do that. But
Yeah.
everyone's listening to music, listening to a podcast. So I'm like, I want to reach out to people in that way. And then yeah, in terms of the content, there's not much out there in terms of like talking about trauma, talking about boundaries, talking
Mm-hmm.
about men's mental health, men
Mm.
talking about their emotions. That doesn't happen. Building boundaries with family members, and also building boundaries with in-laws, right? Like I think that's something people struggle with, and me and my wife have gone through those kind of struggles as well. Being a married couple, with my family and everything, so we've gone through that, and I'm like, no one really talks about this,
Yeah.
especially men, especially a guy. So that's what I want to do. And also I don't have the training or experience in it, but helping people understand what trauma is, what inner child work is. So I've actually had a couple people come in on the podcast and talk about that because some people don't even know what trauma means,
Yeah.
or they don't know what inner child is. So there's still people out there that don't know what boundaries are, and that's I'm not saying that as like a knock. It's just
Yeah.
they just don't know that. I didn't even know what that was,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
bringing light and awareness to these topics because it's not really, like I said, there's not many people that do it
Yeah.
and talk about it.
No, and I love that you're touching on those things and you're right. Like I think we have access to therapists, but a lot of times they're white therapists and spent a lot of years working in mental health and I love a lot of the therapists I work alongside. So like you said, it's not a knock. However, for racialized people, when you talk about things like boundaries or issues with your mother-in-law and those dynamics, there is a bit of a different cloud over our head than the general North American conversations you have about boundaries and communication. A lot of those tactics don't work the first time when someone tells you to go do that. There has to be a way that we have to
Yeah.
start. And when your own people that are going through similar stuff can start opening the door to those conversations, I think you get a lot more people wanting to step up and talk about it because you're like, oh yeah, that like you said, starting at like we don't even know what these boundaries are and how they could help us. So I think that's great. Like, what do you hope your listeners take away from listening to your podcast?
Knowing that it's happening to everyone, whether they want to talk about it or not, whether they want to put on a perfect face or image, everyone's struggling with it. There's no one that isn't. By me talking about it, by bringing on guests, the hope is that, hey, these are everyday people just like you who are also going through some of these items, and knowing that it's okay to talk about it, right? Like I think the good thing is, like, if you look back, think about, like, the early 2000s or early 2010s. Now I'm gonna sound old, but whatever. The only way you could really like make videos, or like I guess what I'm trying to say, anyone can just go on camera now and talk about anything, right? Which in a way it floods the video content out there, but at the same time, people like me can go out there and talk about these things now, right? Like I'm able to, like, if you did a podcast like say 10, 15 years ago, there'd probably be only a select few people that could do it. Now anyone can hop on like a podcast platform, right? And
Yeah.
I think it gives us the opportunity to share these stories and just realize like it's okay to talk about it, right? Don't, and I think the other thing too is, like, don't strive for perfection. Perfection is a
Mm-hmm.
myth. Like there is no perfection really. I always tell people, forget perfect relationships, go for fulfilling relationships.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of those fake things that we've been taught about how to, again, what are people going to think? So from the outside, does everything look squeaky clean? So you have to pretend to be perfect. You have to pretend everything's going well. And when really everyone likely in that community is suffering with the same relationship issues that God, if somebody brought it up, we could have all learned
Mhm.
and done better with. And I
Yeah.
think these different platforms that are out there, like we said, are really good opportunities if they're used in the right way for us to, like you said, get to the bottom of some of these conversations. And sometimes you hear other generations, even my generation, you know, with the whole, well, I turned out fine, we survived. What is with these other generations wanting to always talk about their safe spaces? And I just think those are always reminders of like, but they're like reminders of our time capsule. Like that is the one way of thinking that we had for so long because we didn't have all the resources to do better. So it's like, you know, like you said, technology, the way the iPhone started to where it's at now. And somebody with whatever the newest version of iPhone now is going to say, well, I don't want an iPhone 5. I want the newer version because there's more things that come with it. And I think that's what we have to sometimes remind people when we get stuck with, why are we making a big deal about talking about these things? Well, because our history is going to continue to repeat. And so here we are talking about, okay, how to make that better. So I think it's cool that you're doing this. I want to also ask you, like, what are you learning? What's the biggest thing what's your biggest takeaway so far from all the guests you've had? You've had, you know, psychologists, you've had counselors, you've had people with personal experiences. So all the people coming in, what are you taking? What's your big takeaway so far?
Yeah, before I answer that, I want to address what you were saying about, like, you know, what's with this new generation? Why are they, you know, why can't they handle it, quote unquote? I want to give you an example of something I've gone through recently, and I think it'll relate a lot to the listeners. So my mindset a lot was like this hustle culture with like a lot of people where I was like, burnout is just what you have to go through. That's just what it is. If you want to work hard, make your way, you got to work your ass off day in and day out, right? So that's what my mindset was. But in the last year and a half, I really value self-care. I really value downtime. And, you know, I was like talking to my wife. I was like, I feel like this year has been the most year I've been burnt out. And then we kind of talked about it. I'm like, maybe it's not that. Maybe this is the first year I actually have awareness of how bad my burnout was all those years. So, because if I look back, this year has there been burnout? Yes, there has. But I would say it's not as much as it's been before. Because before my mind was like, I don't have an option. This is how life is. But now I don't think that way, right? Like I want more for my life. So I always tell people like self-awareness is like a double-edged sword. Like it's good to be self-aware, but then there's a lot of other things you need to deal with. So I think that's what it is too, where people, you know, they the older generations might be like, oh, like I never dealt with this, or I never had this problem, because you never dealt with it or thought about it, but if you actually did, you would realize that it's kind of like that phrase that people might use. Oh, I had a really great childhood. I mean, I'm sure you did, but if you dig deeper, you know there's aspects in there that you didn't have, right? And I realized that the hard way. And I'll answer the second question. I think just like what I was saying earlier, I think just realizing that everyone is experiencing a lot of these issues in our community. It's very common. Even when I do anonymous Q&As, it's usually 3, 4 of the same things. Like, you know, how do I like make my parents take me seriously? How do I go to school and do what I want to do? My parents are forcing me to get married. My wife and my parents fight. I'm so lonely. I don't know how to talk about my mental health. So it's all of these 4 or 5 same things. And it just shows, I think, like through my podcast, it shows that this stuff is happening to us all over within our communities. So why not get that help and talk about it? I know that's easier said than done, but I'm just trying to show that you know, one individual might have a unique situation to them, but 80% is probably really relatable to everyone around them. Like they've gone through something similar. So I think that's what I've realized, that everyone goes through a lot of the same stuff.
And I think it's connection. Like I think whether we all have gone through something similar or not, it's very therapeutic. There's something to be said as humans. We thrive on connection. And when someone doesn't see us or hear us, especially when we're suffering or in pain, then we find other ways to seek that connection, which we'll talk about in a little bit with, you know, the good old addiction and violence and all these things that are happening in our community. So sure, we can say we turned out fine. Why are these people complaining? But like, we haven't turned out fine because we're just learning now that we've been surviving all these generations with our intergenerational trauma, our history that so many of us, including me, it hasn't been tapped into. And I think sometimes you talked about doing the inner child work. Like sometimes we think, our story as a baby start at the same time as our moms, our dads, our grandparents, but their story started way before ours. So they're bringing all of their trauma. There's research out there now that's showing us that these chemicals get released when our mothers are pregnant, and they're passing this down to us. And so now, like, do I want to break a barrier with my own kids, or do I want to pass this on to them? So I just think, those of us that are challenging that, I think that's important, because it is our responsibility to step up and start doing something different. And it's our parents' generation was sacrificing for us and surviving. And I think it's our time to give back now and do the work, with the people in our communities that are paving the way with their stories, trying to change systems with their books, all these things that are coming out that I think are great for our community, like your podcast. So what has stuck with you? What's a story or a guest that you've had come on that, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't stop thinking about this conversation, that you want to get out there? Like what is something that really has stood out to you with the guests that you've had on?
Yeah, there's certainly a lot, but I think there was one where, I had one guest, talk about his struggles with alcohol, and just how, it was so raw and authentic. And, I just was so taken back. And I mean, there's a couple instances of that, but that's the first one that comes to mind. I was so taken back that I forgot I was even recording. And like, I was just like, holy shit, like this is amazing. And just how he talked about his struggles and like how hard it was for him to get out and then get sober. I just thought like, wow, this episode is just amazing. And like, a lot of people, I recommend it to a lot of people, and, not necessarily people who, it's kind of hard, like everyone has their different relationship with alcohol, but, for me, it was a wake up call, because I've struggled with alcohol before too. So it kind of like reminded me of like how I dealt with it in the past and how I deal with it now. And just like everyone in my circle, I was like, guys, listen to this. Like, you don't necessarily have to, because he was really deep into it, and he kind of classified himself as an alcoholic, which that's his thing. But I just told everyone, like, listen to this episode; it'll give you a really different perspective on alcohol, because it's so glorified, right? And it's just like there's so many other things about it, and it gets romanticized a lot as well. And it just that episode, I was like, wow, everyone should listen to this. Not just because he's on my platform, but just because it was so amazing.
Oh, yeah. But I think that's it. It doesn't matter that you're right. It's not that it's your platform at all. It's these, everyone is thinking these things. Any one of us that can sit here, I mean, unless if you're like, don't drink at all or don't use any kind of substances, fine. But those of us that dabble in it, we all have a relationship in some sort of way with that substance, whether it's weed, whether it's pills, prescribed pills, whether it's alcohol, whatever. We're using that as a coping mechanism most of the time. And we all owe that to go and dig into, like, what would happen if this substance wasn't here? Like, what would I be unmasking at the end of the day? And I think to have people like that on to share that is super important to pass on to other people, because there's so many generations can, I think, relate to that. Like, many of us grew up in homes where alcohol, I mean, the other thing is, like, it's like a controversial relationship because it's also a celebration. If you go to someone's house and you don't get offered a drink, the politics come out, right? It's like,
oh my God.
Somebody's been sober for 40 years and they can't, they don't want to offer you a drink. And if you don't, it's like you grow up and you hear these conversations about, they didn't offer me a drink. I can't believe it. Like, this is the way it's supposed to be. And I like that you're challenging that and saying that's not necessarily.
For me, I can be in situations sober, like, it doesn't bother me, but I do miss that aspect of, like, grabbing. Like, I mean, I still drink, but the days I don't drink, I go out, it does kind of feel weird not having, like, something to cheers with. So then what I do is get, like, non-alcoholic beer or, like, a non-alcoholic mocktail, and then I'm, like, cheersing with them. Or I'll get, like, an energy drink or something. So I understand that aspect too, right? That part is fun, but it's just, there's a fine line with alcohol, and everyone has their own relationship
Totally.
with it, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. You had mentioned earlier, we had talked about communication. That's a big part of what you do. I'm just wondering if we can talk a little bit more about, communication is the key to everything in life, as we know, and a conversation that didn't go well is going to come out in some sort of way. So I'm curious with the work you're doing, like what are some common communication misconceptions or barriers? Maybe the top 3 that come to your mind that you think some of us don't even realize this, but we struggle in this dynamic with these communication issues in our household, or maybe with our parents, maybe with our partners. What would you say would be kind of your top 3 that you see come up a lot?
I think, one would be intent versus impact. So, I might, let's say for example, I make a comment to you and it might just be like a friendly comment. Well, I think but the impact it has on you, it might really hurt you and affect you. And then I guess like understanding that, right? So, I might just say to you, "Hey, what's up, dude? You're looking really skinny today," and they might get really really hurt and offended by it, whatever for whatever reason, and they come to me, and I say, "Hey, what's wrong with you? Calm down, relax. That's not what I meant." So I do see sometimes people do run into that, but then what makes it worse is they invalidate what the other person is feeling. So they might say things like, "Oh, you're being sensitive. You're being weird. Like, calm down." So you're almost denying that person of feeling a certain way. Then they start thinking like, "Oh my God, like maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I am being weird." And now like again, they're suppressing those emotions. So I see a lot of that. And then a second one, and I'm sure you've experienced this or know this, is assumptions, right? That person didn't shake my hand today. Screw them. I'm never talking to them again. How dare they show me that disrespect? When really maybe something happened to them that they're so zoned out that they forgot to shake your hand by mistake. So that's that assumption. Or like, this person didn't show up to my birthday. You don't like me anymore. You know what? Next time their birthday comes, I'm gonna say no right away.
Yeah.
Without even talking about it. So there's that. And then I think just, a lot of and just communication in itself, like keeping the communication strong, not only just with your partner, but with your, family members. Like I did like a mental health post recently because I've been posting on my stories on Instagram. And I said to like everyone, like the key relationships you have and the good relationships you have, don't just rest on that. Like keep watering the plant in those relationships, right? Because me and you might have a good relationship as friends, and then what if I don't like hang out with you for like 6, 7, 8 months? There's gonna be a difference, and obviously there's some people where you can pick right back up with them, but most of the time, keep that communication strong with the person, and it's gonna make the relationship better.
I agree with you. I think the assumptions is one that I had, like this whole thing where sometimes we expect people to read our minds and just know that shaking my hand, is important to me, but like maybe to you, it's not important. But because it's important to me, it must be to everyone. So like we're expecting people to read our mind and know these things. But then the other side of that too, of where we decide we know how to read people's minds and we assume thinking, oh yeah, this is what Sunny likes. This is who he is. This is the person he is. And we never asked. And I think it gets us in trouble a lot because we decided we knew something. And a lot of times that's our anxiety or fear, need of control. And then also like, as we're talking about these communication styles we have, there's lots of labels and different kinds of names. I'm sure when we Google, we can find all these ones that we relate to. But I think the key is chipping away at why is that the communication style that I follow? Or why am I so triggered or irritated by that communication style my boss or my friend or my husband follow? Whenever I've done that, I'm learning that it goes back to, again, my childhood, how my mom or my dad would discipline me, how my aunt would talk to me, how my one cousin would make fun of me. Like all of those things relate to why we communicate the way we do, why we have to read minds or not. And I think a lot of what you said about we think we're the main source so that everyone has to know the things that we love. Like you didn't come to my birthday, now it's tit for tat. Now I'm not going to come to your birthday. When really I'm hurt. I wanted to spend time with you. I was really looking forward to you coming to my birthday, but I can't tell you that. And so instead I'm just going to make you suffer and tell you to not come to mine. Right. And so I think when you're when you're breaking these things down, having these conversations, what are people saying to that? Like, what are people's thoughts when you kind of help them break down some of these roles we play when we communicate?
I think in, my personal experience and also just like working with clients, it's not that they aren't aware of this. Like when I shine a light on this, they can see it and they understand it. But it's like, how do I go approach that person? I don't know how to do these conversations. I never saw my mom or dad do it. I just saw my mom and dad just say, let's not go to their functions. Let's not go to their birthdays. Like, look what they did to us. That's all I saw. I don't know how to have these conversations. Or if I do, I end up being in a fight. I end up swearing at them. I ended up exploding on them. So I think a lot of people just don't have that skill set. And it goes back to what I was saying. Your household is not the Wikipedia of living a life. Like, you go out of your household and find other ways. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of unlearning you need to do too. So yeah, I do help people in that sense. And even for me, it was a lot of like, I saw this in my own life, and also like keeping the peace. So if
Yes.
someone does upset you and hurt you, just don't worry about it. They're family. You're gonna love them no matter what. They're always gonna be there. And if you bring something forth, you're messing the relationship up, not the other.
Mm-hmm.
But really, and I think that's the other thing too. Other people might be like, if I bring this up and I bring up the conversation, I'm gonna make things awkward. When really, think of it this way: they are making things awkward by doing it in the first place, right? So it's a switch. It's like a unlearning thing that you have to do, and that's what I teach people too. I think a big thing that I was going to mention in those three items is vulnerability. People don't want to be
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable and say, you know what, when you didn't come to my birthday, that really hurt me. No one really wants to say that. It's hard, right?
Yeah, you're being a pussy. It
Yeah,
is
unfortunately, that's
what
what it
someone's
is.
gonna laugh and say back
Yeah,
at you when
yeah,
really you're not. You're making the opposite of that. But
yeah.
we enable
Exactly.
when we're not ready
Mhm.
to grow, or somebody is doing something that seems like a little out of the norm. We bring them back down sometimes and say, "That's stupid. Why are you bringing that up?" or whatnot. And I think it's like you said. I think a lot of too. Like, I just want to go back this discomfort thing that you're saying of, we focus on the wrong thing. I'm more worried that you're going to get upset when I bring it up. And I think that's also like a strategy in avoiding conflict. We do that
Hmm.
so that we can control the outcome and decide, oh, okay, if I say that, then, and I don't think we're doing it on purpose, but that's how we're built to think along the way. And then we do it so we can
Exactly. Yeah.
not have to take responsibility. And I think, I don't know, for me, I think anytime that I've operated that way, it's failed a relationship, it's failed whatever moment I'm having with whoever, because sometimes we go by this thing of, what are you doing for me to trust you? And I learned years ago in the workplace that it's, what am I doing to be trusted? Like, we focus on, what are your job? Sunny's job is to respect me, and I have to trust him. But it's more like, what am I? All I can be in charge of is, what am I doing for Sunny to trust me? Sunny's job is to figure out how
Mhm.
he can be. But we don't do that. We say, you better do what you need to do so I can trust you. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, because I was going to ask you a couple of things about the communication stuff.
Yeah, just one last thing. I think a lot of people almost want like a guarantee. Even when I have clients come to me, they'll say, "Well, this is this guaranteed to like make this relationship better with my partner, my mom, my dad? Will I be treated with respect?" And I say, there is no guarantee. What you can do is control yourself, control how you're going to communicate and how you're going to react. And in some cases, the other party might not be willing to do that. But sometimes these conversations, can you get it done in one go?
Yeah.
I mean, it's rare. It's very
Right.
rare. That's why, like, when I have clients, we usually have like, we work on it for a couple of weeks, because think about it. Karen, if you all of a sudden go talk to your mom or dad right now and you've never stood up for yourself and you do it, they're going to be like, who the hell do you think you are? Like, are you drunk? Are you on drugs or something? Like, what's wrong with you? Right? Because I always tell like people, like, it has to be a part of your identity. It needs to go from Karen just had a conversation where she tried to stand up for herself versus Karen is someone who stands up for herself.
Yeah.
And that takes time to build, right? So I think that's the other thing too. It is a lot of work. And sometimes you can get it done in one or two conversations. Like, I've been in both parts where it's taken me months and years versus I've done it in one or two conversations. They always say boundaries is for you and not the other person, because you're building kind of
Yeah.
the way you want to be treated. And once you do that, I think the underrated thing I didn't realize when I started incorporating boundaries and standing up for myself is your self-love, your self-confidence, your self-esteem goes so high, and you feel like you can truly live how you feel and you can truly express yourself. And I think regardless of the outcome of the other conversation, that alone is benefit enough to do it.
Totally. When I hear you talking about communication and all that, I think a lot of times when I talk to some of our loved ones, like they're not present in conversation. They're like not listening, or they have 100,000 things on their mind because they haven't dealt with whatever life issues that are going on, all these things. And, you know, every time you're on the phone with someone or you're talking to someone and they don't feel like they're giving back in the conversation, like what makes you want to go back and do that again? You know what I mean? So I just wondering if that comes up for you with the nonverbal stuff in the work you're doing. Does that come up in our community talk with your clients?
I would say it does, but not too much. At least not for the work I do, or like, you know, for me personally. But I kind of do see like what you mean. I do think a lot of us are preoccupied. We're looking at our phones, or, you know, we're thinking about something else, or there's something else there going into the conversation that, you know, we just have a mindset or understanding of, right? And that's why I say, like, going back to, well, your conversation with the other person, will it result in a successful resolution, or will it result in you being respected, or those things? Like, it's not going to always happen because the person's mindset might be different.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of like the presence thing, I think it's important to look at that too. And I think a lot of people sometimes don't look at that, because if you're going to approach someone and have a difficult conversation and they just look so lost, or just, actually, you know what this is making me think of now is, in our community, it's, you might see someone, okay, get into the door after work and they're just so tired. There's not really that like, oh, okay, you look really stressed out or preoccupied. There's not that like space given to say, okay, it's okay, we can talk about this later. Because if you say, let's talk about it later, to like with parents, they might be like, oh, I guess what I'm telling you is not important. No, it's not that. It's just, I'm really tired. Can't we just talk about it later? Like, what's the big deal? I think there's not that
Totally
kind of like reading someone's body language, right? I think that, now that I'm thinking about it, I did have a client like that. You know, there's a couples, and they were like 25 to 27, I think, around that age group. And same kind of thing where the female was saying like, oh yeah, when he comes home, he doesn't want to start talking to me right away. And I'm just like, you know, we dug into it. He was just really stressful. And then he felt guilty not talking right away. But by talking to her right away, he would not come home. He would actually go to like a bar and drink and calm down, then come home.
Yeah. When you think about what we choose to do instead of what could be better, but we need transitions. Like you even said it to me before we started. You had a busy week and you took a moment for yourself yesterday. You were off social media. You were kind of off things. You needed some time to unwind. And I think that's self-awareness. That's like really good because you're learning what you need. And we're taught go, go, go. Like you said in the beginning, work hard. We're never taking a minute to transition, whether it's from the day, from when we wake up to get to work, to get home, to dinner. But then again, when we have to go to the bar to have a drink, or we use certain substances, or we do certain things, I think those are signs telling us that we're trying to supplement, like a way to slow down, or a way to tell our brain, I don't want to think about these crazy things. So it's just it's a good reminder.
Right, yeah.
Should we do our middle fingers up?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah? Okay. What do you want to put your middle fingers up to?
Caring about what others think.
Ooh. What will other people think? What will they say? Fuck yes. Okay, tell me more about that.
Look kikikoge.
Look kikikoge, right? Totally.
Yeah.
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 Look kikikoge, 100%. So what about that? Why are we putting our middle fingers up to that one?
It's crazy because so many people live a certain life up to someone else's standard, or what will people think. Yet on inside they're so miserable and they just like hate their lives. And I've seen so many people like that in every facet of life, and it's just so unfortunate because at the end of the day, you know, do those people care about what you're living up to? Maybe or maybe not. But why do you have to like, you know, put your whole life just because other people are gonna think that? I hate that so much that people do that. Like they're throwing their life away. And
where do you think it comes from? Like, where do you think? It's such a big issue for many of us, and it's messed up a lot of our childhoods. It's messed up because secrets were kept. There's so many things that phrase has, you know, affected us with. Where do you think that sort of belief comes from for many of us with what will people think?
I would say it's two things. One, it's, you know, going back to like that perfect image, right? Like we want our family to have a perfect image. And two is acceptance. If we don't look perfect, everyone's going to reject us. And I think that goes beyond just the South Asian community, right? It's like that like caveman era thing. Like I want to be accepted in this tribe. So I think it goes back to that. But I think in the context of South Asian, I think it is that comparison of like, the parents' generation, they might have siblings and they want their parents to accept them. So if there's one little thing that, oh, my son has to go to rehab, or my son doesn't have a job, he's pursuing an untraditional career, or my daughter's not married, if that gets out there or something like that, like people are gonna judge us or gonna reject us, right? So and then it's just not, if you think about it, is that really gonna happen? It may or may not, but I think it's just because that's that learning that never got challenged.
Mm-hmm. It's like fear-based. And
Fear-based, yeah.
I can't help but like think, as you know, I'm trying to like do a lot of thinking and learning about our ancestors and our history. A lot of it, I think, goes back to that settler colonization mentality of, you have, the Europeans coming to your country and telling you their way's better, and then they take over and you're like, oh, okay. And every decision was based out of fear. And a lot of our parents' generations did not get to ask, why do I do that thing? Like, have you ever asked your mom or an auntie or relative why we do certain things at weddings, and how many times they actually know why we do it? Like, they're like, oh,
you don't get much of an answer. Yeah,
right.
you don't.
Because like, in their mind, they're just like, why are you even asking? Like, we just do it. Most of us are just asking because we're curious. Like, where did this come from? And no one knows, and everyone just keeps doing it. To me, a lot of that trickles down to exactly what you said, is then it starts to impact us day to day in our households of like, what will they think? What will they think? What will they think? And your question of like, what will they think? Like, what? Let's map it out. Like, what are the worst possible scenarios of what they're going to think? I'm trying to figure out why we do it.
Yeah, no, I see I see what you mean. It could also be because maybe they're not ready to accept it. I guess whether it's good or bad, maybe they themselves are like stuck so much, like, why is this happening? And then obviously if you go and tell someone else, it shines a light on what they don't want to address. Maybe it could be that. 'Cause if you think about it, when you have something you're struggling with, or you lose a job, or you're struggling with mental health, or if you're struggling with an addiction, if you aren't ready yourself to accept what's going on in the situation you're in, you're not going to want to go tell other people, right? You're gonna like, oh, what are they going to think? But I do think it is a little bit of what they will think, like for whatever reason that's fear based. But it's also like, I myself haven't even accepted it yet. But if I don't say it to the world, it's going to be like all on, it's, I'm going to be spotlighted.
See, it's like the self-judgment that we project out on others is, I'm embarrassed by this thing, or I'm insecure about this, or honestly, a lot of times too, as we've been talking, our main theme is like identity. Many of us don't grow up knowing what we love, what we don't love, what we like, all that we're told. And part of what will people say is like, I don't even know what I will say. I'm so interested in what my neighbor is going to say, because I don't know if I want to vote for that politician or not. So like, do we look to it that way? And we think, oh, I don't like that you made that decision, I won't do that. But there's so much peer pressure within our own community that it ends up being this divide and conquer mentality that we put on ourselves. Like, your household could help me with the problem, but I'll never know because I'm so worried about what your household's going to think.
It's so ironic though, isn't it? Because one of the ways, like, what will others think is you want acceptance in a way, right? I think a little bit of that is there, that you want acceptance. But what you said is like, hey, like, we are going through the same thing. Wouldn't that bring someone together too?
Yeah,
right? Like,
I know. It's so weird.
It's crazy. Yeah.
It's like, it is. It's bizarre. But I have faith in our generations, the ones, that are coming after us, that we're starting to push that a bit and say, that's not working for us anymore, thinking about what other people will think. Because I'm not privy. It's not my privilege to know what other people will think. What do you do? What do you do to get back on track? What do you do to deal with the what will people think mentality? Like, how do you fight that in your day to day?
I think it's gonna be there regardless, no matter what you do. If you're breathing, it's gonna happen. I mean, I guess it can even happen if you're dead. People can still talk about you. But
they really will then, yeah.
Okay, I guess that doesn't help my point. But I guess what I'm trying to say is it's always gonna be there. There's always gonna be people talking about you. I don't think the goal is to say I'm gonna live a life where people don't talk about me, but live a life that you're proud of, no matter what people say about you. That's the way I say it. And I'm not just saying it like as a quote or anything, but that's the way I look at it. I know people do talk about me. I know there's people that talk about like, why am I sharing my story? Why am I bringing up things and things that shouldn't be talked about in the community? I know that's all there. Do I like it? No, no, I don't. I mean, like any person, we all want like 100% love and,
Mm-hmm.
like acceptance. But I have my own internal acceptance, and the people around me that support me, that means so much more than like, other people I don't really opinion I value. It's kind of the cost of living this authentic life, I would say. And it's a cost that's worth it because you could certainly just subscribe to like, okay, this is the way I want to live life. This is a roadmap based on what they're going to think, and I'm just going to live it, but you're going to be miserable inside, right? So I
Yeah.
think it's never going to go away. It's kind of like, how they always say, it's not so much that get rid of the fear, but act despite the fear. I kind of
Mm-hmm.
compare it to that, where people are going to talk about you regardless. It's just how you're going to deal with it, and
Totally.
if you're gonna let it stop you.
Yeah. All press is good press, right? So,
Yeah,
if they're talking
yeah,
about you, maybe it's a good thing, but or ask them like what will you say when I tell you that my daughter
yeah,
is marrying this person or my family is, whatever those things that we worry about, because there's so many, we can get into that all day about all the things that we care about what others will say. So maybe that's the thing.
Mhm.
Maybe that's the thing for all of us, is to like, if we're living that life, is just, starting there with, what do I worry about the most about the answer behind what will people say? And maybe we need to just like unpack that more, because it's definitely getting in the way of a lot of people wanting to heal and move forward, because like
yeah,
you said, people are like, don't talk about your stories. And I know I hear this from people because they think others will feel sorry for you when they hear you share your childhood of being bullied, your parents getting divorced, those things. That's one way of looking at it, I guess, is people will feel sorry for you. And another way of looking at it is, the more we talk about it, the more we can get clear and heal. And, again, quality of life, like, what are we for here? So that's a good MFU.
Mhm.
And anything you want to add to that before we move on?
No, I think that's it. I know it's easier said than done to say like what I said, but I do think like when you do reach a point where you know what you want in this life and what you like your values, your beliefs, and the way you operate in your life, what other people think is kind of like on the low priority list. You're not gonna really not. I wouldn't say you don't care anymore, but it's just kind of like whatever. It's a part of what it is. Big like kind of like mosquitoes in the summer. They're annoying. You hate them, but whatever. It's
But
not
they're
gonna
way
stop
better
my
than
summer plans.
wasps. I'll take mosquito bites over getting stung by a wasp. So, yeah,
Oh
I
yeah,
think
see?
it is. It's like trying to take charge of our own life and figuring out, okay, what will I say? Like, I should care more
Yeah,
about how I feel about this and what my neighbor or those other people over there. And if people care for us, they're not going to wait for us to wonder that. They're going to show up at our door. They're going to call us and they're going to check in and say, okay, like, how are you with that matter that's going on? And so the rest can think and do whatever it is. That was a good one. I like that. I think we could like do a whole episode on that one. So maybe that's something
literally, yeah.
we come back to one day. Okay, I just want to shift gears here and move into a little bit about you. So I'm
hmm
curious, you're doing this work with people, you're helping them work through some household issues, and you obviously, in the same kind of boat, have gone through your own. So I'm curious, like, do you have some stories or some experiences that kind of stand out to you about what growing up was like for you in particular, with immigrant parents? You mentioned the divorce, you mentioned the bullying. Any other
hmm
experiences that you would throw in there that you feel maybe shape who you're becoming as a man today?
Like I was going back to earlier, like my parents went through a divorce. It was obviously hard on my siblings, myself. I didn't really have a relationship with my dad at the time. So that obviously like really impacted me, like even when I became a teenager and like early 20s. And obviously like now I have a relationship with them, but I obviously never got that when I was younger. I really had a lot of good family members around me who supported my mom and me during that time. And it just like I was always told like it's okay, don't cry, everything's gonna be okay. In my early 20s, a really big shift for me was one, I started going to university because when I was in high school, elementary, I had no confidence in myself. So I guess like the potential wasn't really good for me. Like everyone was like worried about like, oh, what's Sonny gonna do with his life? Like, is he gonna ever get a proper job and all that kind of stuff. So when I went to university, I started to really develop confidence because I was doing well. But then what I started to find was when I was, hanging out with cousins or other family members or just even friends, I would have a few drinks and I would just explode and be like, how could you do this to me when I was 5? How could you do this to me when I was 7? Like all these old stories would be coming up in my mind, and then I'd start yelling. And again, I had never stood up for myself, so everyone was just like shocked, like what's wrong with Sunny? Like is he that drunk or something? And I wasn't that drunk. It's just all these emotions were finally coming out, and I was finally standing up for myself, but I couldn't control it, right? Like it was kind of like a shotgun. I pushed the button of the shotgun, and it was out of control. I couldn't control it. And then I would wake up the next morning. I was like, oh, I was just drunk. Like it's okay, it happens. Not thinking anything of it. And then I say like the first phase of my growth and my development was like that confidence building, right? And I started reading a lot of books on motivation and confidence, growth mindset, which is great. And I still kind of live those values today. So this kind of like outburst repeated for like I'd say 6, 7 months, and a lot of my relationships were getting damaged, and I was like getting really annoyed, like kind of like bitter, like what the hell? For the first time in my life, I am finally standing up for myself, and everyone's saying I'm the bad guy. Screw them. Like, what the hell? This is not fair. Like, why is this happening? I'll look at all this shit they did to me for all those years, and I'm finally like saying that's not cool, and now they're getting mad at me. And at the time, I didn't understand it, but I know it like now. Uh, so it was around, I think it was, yeah, like the pandemic first started. I was working from home, and then the particular job was just really stressful. And another coworker had recommended in the employee assistance program. And then I was like, okay, I need to talk to a therapist about work. But honestly, going into the therapy session, it was nothing about work. It was all about this, really talking about my childhood experiences and really understanding why I was having these outbursts. And I had that same kind of mindset. Oh, it sucked that, my dad wasn't there. But because of this, I got stronger. Look at me now. I'm in university. Like I overcame it all. But there's so many things in there that I didn't talk about. And the pain was still there. The trauma was still there of that bullying, of the divorce, and just everything, right? So I kind of worked through that. And then that's where I started managing my feelings towards others, and like if someone upset me, like having conversations with them. And that's where I got into the whole communication thing. But I think like those outbursts really were a huge point in my life, because it really showed that, hey, it was all about keeping the peace. It was all about holding it in. I was always told like don't cry either, and I would always as a young boy at school, I would never cry, and I took pride in that. But there was this one time I remember, like I had this toy, like a Power Ranger toy, because I remember I had all the Power Rangers, and this kid stole it from me. And so many things had happened to me. Like I'd scraped my knee, I fell off the swings, like I had like physical pain, and I never cried. Even the kids used to say to me, like, "Man, you got like some crazy healing powers. Like you get hit, you get punched, and you don't even do anything." Like, and I did do that. Like, if when I was getting bullied, if someone punched me on my arm or my stomach, I would not like show that I was in pain. And I was like, wow, I do got healing powers.
Oh.
Yeah. So going back to the story of the kid taking my Power Ranger, he snatched out of my hand, and I cried so much, and everyone made fun of me. Like, you cry over a little toy? And I thought that too, but really that was a tipping point, because I was holding all those emotions in, and I finally cried. And again, I didn't tell my mom, because again, I didn't want her to think, I didn't want her to get more sad, like, oh, why is Sunny crying? So I think like that story, I think a lot of people like listening, that I'm sure they've gone through like that as well. And
that's that one's like a core one that stands out for you. When you now, as grown up Sunny, like when you go back and talk to little Sunny the day that Power Ranger was taken away from him, what do you go back and tell him now?
It's funny you mentioned that. So I'm originally from like Vancouver Island, right? And last year I actually went back to that elementary school, and luckily it was spring break, so there was like they were running some course, so the school was open, right? So it wasn't like gated or anything, so I could freely walk through the entire like inside and outside and in the playground. And I told my wife, like, I want to go here. I need to like wrap up this chapter of my life in a way, right? So I went there, went to the different stages. Like there's like some areas I remember I would get bullied, and I went there and like, said like, you didn't deserve this. It's not fair. Like you didn't deserve this, and just know that what happened to you had nothing to do with you. Like, you're a great person. You're an awesome person. Yeah, that particular part, like saying like, everyone was just trying to protect you. It's not their fault. They didn't know any better. But at the same time, like, just know that it's okay if you had cried. I'm like, no one would have judged you any differently. I wouldn't have judged you any differently. And I love you no matter what. And I said, like, the rest of this life, I'm always going to have your back. I'm always going to be here for you. So it was an emotional moment. In talking about it now, I'm kind of getting
Yeah.
emotional, but I like started crying like a lot in that process. And, it's, cause there was certain parts, like my wife was with me too. And like, she just like gave me some space. But when she heard me crying, she came to me and like said, it's okay. Let it out. Instead of my initial thought would be like, she's going to say, it's okay. Don't cry.
Yeah.
But she's like,
Aw.
Sonny, let it all out. You're here to wrap this up. Like, give it your all. Like, it sucks that this all happened to you, but just know that you're loved. And it also made me realize too, because when I was younger, I was like, I guess I used to like act goofy, make jokes, and people would always be like, "Don't do that, don't do that." And then I always used to tell people, not tell people, I was always scared to make jokes and be funny for so many years.
Hmm.
But then when I just started embracing that, like in the last 4 or 5 years, it felt really good. And I even told the younger version of myself, like, I know people used to say you were weird and goofy, but these kind of qualities are okay. They're okay sometimes. And just know, like, the way you wanted to be at 6, people ended up loving you for that now in a way. So I
Hmm.
said, like, you have so much love and respect because it's kind of like how do I say it? Like, I'm getting to live what you wanted all along and
Yeah.
I'm getting to experience it. So it's kind of like, there's times I was talking to the little version of myself as a different person, but at the same time, it was all like, we're one. But yeah, it was very therapeutic, I would say.
I'm really glad you shared that. Thank you for that. You were getting a little, you said emotional while
Hmm.
you were telling us this. And so was there anything in particular that stands out for you or that brings that emotion out for you?
I think just like doing that and like reassuring the younger version of myself that it wasn't his fault, that he's loved and accepted, because those are things I didn't feel when I was younger. I didn't feel like I was loved. Like, obviously, my mom showed me a lot of love. My family showed me a lot of love. But at that age, yeah, you're in that phase where you want you want that acceptance from like people at school, right? And I never
Mm-hmm.
got that. And I just never felt like I could be who I wanted to be. And, if someone, like, just at that age, like, yeah, I couldn't really express myself because
Yeah.
I had the fear of being bullied or made fun of. So I think like just telling my inner child that it's okay. I mean, it wasn't okay what happened, but just know I have you now. I'm always gonna take care of you. And there was just something inside me that changed. I know it was a shift that I experienced. Like, wow, like I feel healed. And I don't know. Like, I actually went to a playground like last week with my nephew, and there was like a little glimpse and flash of those memories, but it's not as intense now. So maybe
Yeah.
there was healing done.
Well, and it sounds like you also got to go do something that maybe you didn't as a kid, which was feel in charge of what was happening. And as an
Yeah.
adult, you get to go back and patch that up with little you. I'm curious for people that are listening and that have never done something like this, that maybe think this is just not for me, love it for you. Like, what would you say to them? Because I bet you there was probably a time where maybe you thought the same thing too, of like, what? Go talk to your little self. Like, that's stupid. And so what would you say
Yeah.
to folks that maybe haven't done something like that and could benefit from it?
When my therapist first brought inner child, I'm like, what is that? What does that even mean? I'm like, I'm not a child. And he said, just go talk to your inner child, talk about like do things that you'd love to do when you were a kid. And I'm like, why is it so easy? He's like, why does it have to be so hard? And I'm like, okay, fine. So I actually, it didn't start with that. So I've been actually doing this kind of inner child like exploring and work, and I still do it today. But to get to that point, it took me like, I would say that was last year, 2023. So about 2.5 years. But it didn't start with like the actual talking. It started with like going back and reliving things you like. So I think a lot of what happens is when you get older, like be more mature and forget about fun things,
We
right?
lose our
That's one.
innocence.
We lose our innocence. And the other thing in our community, especially, the only way you can have fun is when you're drunk,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's honestly for me. I remember like my therapist was asking like, what do you do to have fun? I'm like, oh, I go to dinner and have drinks. I go to a bar and have drinks. I go mini golfing and have drinks. Okay, what do you like to do for fun? I'm like, well, I play like PS4 sometimes, but that's it. And then he's like, you really gotta like explore having fun. And I'm like, well, what can I do? He's like, what are some things you did as a kid? I'm like, I'm not gonna do that now. That's weird. He's like, why is it weird? And I'm like, yeah, I guess so. I'm like, but I kind of feel embarrassed and shy. And he's like, just do it. Trust me, you'll feel better. So then I actually started like, I'm a fan of Dragon Ball Z. I'm a fan of Yu-Gi-Oh. I'm a fan of Pokemon. So I ended up going to a Yu-Gi-Oh store. It's pretty funny, the sight. 6'1" brown guy walking into a Yu-Gi-Oh store and buying cards. That was pretty funny. I was like telling my wife, she's like, "You're gonna scare me." I'm like, "Don't do." I'm like, "It's okay." I'm like, "I'm one of them
Oh my
too."
God, there's probably
Um,
so many in there doing the same thing too. Like I think you say it so well that you're right. We lose our innocence. We lose that. We're
mhm,
told as kids, you speak when you're spoken to. You're not really seen. You're not really taken.
mhm.
You're not a person as a kid. You're nothing, but you have so much to
Yeah,
contribute as a kid. And then when we grow up, I wonder if this kind of leads me to the question of like, where does that happiness or that joy go for a lot of our guys? Because you're right. Like it really does come out at those reception parties. But aside from events around drinking or letting loose, emotional talk, my brother and I joke that's what's, you're going to drink and have emotional talk. That's what's going to go. Where do you think along the way, like where does that happiness go for you guys and for a lot of the guys that are in the similar boat as you? And then the question to that is like, what are the ways to like find that again and bring it back?
yeah. I think it's like it doesn't necessarily have to be all like childhood stuff, but I mean it works for me. But I think it's just finding things that firstly, don't involve substances. Like, do things that you love to do that you used to do when you were younger, right? Like, you know, play basketball. I mean, you don't have to play like a full-on game or anything, but just do those things that you used to love to do as a kid and just explore, sober hangouts and sober like adventures. I think that really helps a lot. It certainly helped me and just realize that, like for me, I haven't completely quit drinking. I don't know if I will. I mean, I still enjoy it to an extent. To me now, drinking is one way to have fun. It's not the only way to have fun,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think like finding that, but like going back to the inner child thing, like start with like what you did in your childhood. And if you're not comfortable sharing it with everyone, yeah, it's okay. The only person I told in the beginning was my wife. It was only recently when I started talking about it, like on my Instagram and my Snapchat and like showing like, oh, I got this new Pokemon card today. Like I
Mm-hmm.
recently bought like a Pokemon card like a month ago and I showed it on my Instagram stories. I wouldn't have done that like a year ago.
Yeah.
So it's a journey, but I think like it's I think it's also like that mindset. Like, if you act happy and like excited and you're not intoxicated or a substance, something's wrong with you. Like, no,
Yeah.
like why can't we? Now I'm not saying like I'm gonna walk in a Barney suit and like go to the mall or something. Like obviously that's kind of like that'd be weird. But
Hey
what I'm
man, you
saying
can
is
do that. Teach their own.
yeah, I guess. But I guess like what I'm trying to say is like it's okay to like find these other things to have happiness and joy and excitement without alcohol, right? Like obviously alcohol is a substance and whether we control it or not, if you consume alcohol, we know the brain likes it. You get happy, right? That's
Yeah.
gonna happen. But why does it have to be the only way, right? Why can't we have other ways that make us happy?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think the follow-up question to that is like, what will it take to be curious about what makes me happy? Where do I find joy? And I think sometimes a lot of our guys think that are taught that gets put away. You got to be a man. You got to do your man things, whatever that is.
Hmm.
And there's just no time to find that joy. But then there is time to go have that beer or that drink or whatever to let loose because that's how we've been trained or, conditioned to be. I want to ask you, like the father-son relationship. I know you talked about your mom and your dad got divorced. Like, did you have a connection with your dad in those earlier years as a kid going through that bullying?
did. It was very like surface level though. Like, you know, it was more about like, hey, how's it going? How are you? Here's your birthday gift. Here's a gift. Like, it was very like, you know, those kind of, I guess, like, I don't know how to say it, but obligations of, yeah, like, yeah, it was more like this. I saw him, but I didn't really know him personally at that time. It was more just like I would see him every now and then, and I would get gifts from him. And, you know, we had like a family restaurant. So like I would order, like, hey, can I order some food? But I didn't know him as a person. I just knew that, hey, this is my dad.
When you talk to your guy friends or cousins or whatever guys you're hanging around with, like, do any of the guys talk about the kind of role model their dad was, and was it any different than your experience?
I mean, yeah, that's the thing. Like a lot of people in my circle have said I did have a dad at my house, but he wasn't really present. Like he was always working. He never really talked to me about anything. Like financially, he covered me. I covered the family, but he didn't really show me that support and, you know, like that, those words, right? Like, I love
Yeah.
you, son, and all that. And I've seen others where it's just like they still get treated like a kid, right? Like anytime they see their dad, they get treated like a kid, so they just don't really, they try to avoid it and stuff. And where there's a select few where, yeah, their dad was really supportive and supported what they want to do, and if they failed at anything, like they would be like, it's okay, you're gonna get through this. So I've seen like honestly all different sides of how it can happen, but I say yeah, majority of it is they didn't, you know, like I had one, like for one client I had who didn't really know how to express his emotions to
Yeah.
his girlfriend, and you know they were on the brink of breaking up, and then we dug in. It's because the dad really never showed affection to his mom, right? And then he never showed it to his kids. Like again, the house, it had a big house, cars, and like never had to worry about money, but growing up there was no affection.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of our homes that we
Hmm.
hear about is materialistic approach of the cars and the fancy stuff is how
Hmm.
love is shown. And, this is why I was curious. Like many dads that were in the homes of these young boys probably had a very similar relationship, like the way that you did without having your dad. So physically
Hmm.
being present means one thing, but not the whole thing of how to be a father. And I think a lot of our dads have not dealt
I agree.
with
Yeah.
the intergenerational trauma that has been bestowed upon them
Hmm.
from their dads and their dads and their dads. And they did not grow
Hmm.
up being men, boys to men, essentially. And now they're raising boys. You don't see them doing a whole lot of what we grow up watching in North America, that the ideal dad's supposed to
Yeah.
take you out and play catch with you and do a oil change of a car with the car and teach you how to be
Like
a
Uncle,
man.
like Uncle Phil on Fresh Prince.
Totally. Lot of our racialized guys grew up with Uncle Phil totally as
Yeah.
the dad, like it's not just the rappers that sing a rap about it. A lot of our guys would say the same thing. I think we talk about intergenerational trauma and I think we make sense of it, but there is still a responsibility on our fathers to show up
Hmm.
for our boys. I mean, if we want to have kids, and you may be there in your life or the people around you might be at that place, how are we supposed to know what to do with our own children when we don't even know how we were impacted by the way we were raised? How now we're going to continue the cycle of, well, I don't know how to be a father. If you were going to have that kind of a conversation with your dad, or if you were going to encourage a client to have that kind of a conversation with their dad, like, well, how do you think that conversation could go?
It's definitely tough. I mean, I struggled with it too with my dad, and there's been times where it's gone successfully. Sometimes it's been met with resistance. Because I think the number one thing that happens is they say like, "What the hell? What of all the things I did for you?"
Yeah.
And like, you know, I bought you this gift. I had a roof for you. You never had to worry about money, and you're coming up with this stupid emotional bullshit, right? So it's definitely, I would say, that kind of conversation. If you're the standing up and like a respectful relationship with the father son, that's one thing. But the one you're talking about, that does take some time and work,
Mm-hmm.
right? You
Mm-hmm.
can't. It's not a one conversation thing. I think it starts a lot with you. So the son in this situation is that self awareness piece, right? Because if they don't have the self awareness, they're gonna repeat it. But if they have the awareness, they need to really understand how what they missed, right? Because like you said, you might physically have that father in the household, and they sometimes, they say like we get traumatized also from the things that we didn't get, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
maybe they didn't get that love, right? So understanding what you missed, but making sure that you're being very, very careful and not invalidating what you did actually get, which is also important, which is that financial security, the house, like those things. I think it's a thing that's like an ongoing dialogue, but I think it's to approach it with compassion and also understand there's going to be resistance for sure. And know that you also have to see it from the lens of the father. They did, and they're doing what they thought they're supposed to do, right? They busted their ass to get you what they could get you, and just be very, I think, gentle and empathetic in this situation and realize it's going to be met with a lot of resistance.
Yeah.
But if you continue to plant seeds and build on this conversation, it can definitely be achieved. You might not get that. Like I always tell people, like when you have these kind of conversations, like any kind of conversation, will you get that explicit acknowledgement? Like, okay, Sonny, now I respect you, or now I love you. You might not always get that, but you
Totally.
might get it. You might get it in the actions, right? Maybe they'll
Yes.
stop calling. Maybe they'll stop treating you a certain way. Maybe they'll stop calling you a certain name. Maybe they'll show you more affection now, and those are signs that hey, they understood what I was looking
Yeah.
for. So just know that too. Like obviously, the ideal thing is like a movie or a TV show. Like you're right. I'm gonna show you love. I'm gonna
Yeah,
do it. I'm
yeah.
gonna do this.
I'm gonna be a
Right?
better father. But
Yeah.
you're right. Like these things it's a process. It's not. But I do think though, letting our fathers and grandfathers, like all them off the hook, like that's the part where I'm like, we can't expect the thing that we hope we're gonna get from them when we bring these things up. But we do have to start to acknowledge more that there's a huge gap in how fathers are showing up. And I'm only talking right now about their sons. And
Hmm.
I think that role or lack thereof is directly correlated with the impact of your guys' mental health. The things like you're learning about now about crying and what's not okay, like toxic masculinity, and then
Hmm.
toxic masculinity in a racialized situation. So, brown person, Punjabi person going through toxic masculinity with their dad, it has like a even bigger cloud over that too. For some people, like they don't even know what toxic masculinity means, but they're living, breathing, that every day.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like maybe it's not possible to go back and have that kind of conversation or that process with your parent. But I hope, like for our guys, that there's a place where guys can have that conversation with themselves about like, what did I not
Yeah.
get from my
Exactly.
father? And what if I choose to be a father, or if I want to be a role model for men, like how can I be moving forward?
And I just want to add, because now I'm thinking about it, like, what I missed when I was younger, I can never get that, right? Like, there's no, whatever
No time
universe or,
machine. I'm trying to
yeah,
find
no time
one, but
machine.
there's none. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
Elon
So,
Musk can create one for us.
yeah, yeah, exactly, right. Yeah, so I guess what I'm trying to say is like I'll never get that back. But even like when I remember when I talked to my dad about that, I was like, it was kind of like I wasn't looking for it now, but I was saying this is what I missed when I was younger. I wish I had got that, but I'm not gonna get that now. And it's kind of like I don't accept that I won't get that, but I kind of also like it is what it is now. But me just bringing that forth and making him
Yeah.
realize that I missed it made me feel really good. And now, like as an adult, and when I have my own kids, I know I gotta be careful of these
Yeah.
things and be aware of these, right? So it's not like you're necessarily like I mean, if it's a current thing where your dad's not showing you these things and he can do these things immediately, that's great. But for me, he can't do the 5-year-old thing now because I'm not 5, right? So
Yeah.
it's also annoying that too, like just putting it out there and acknowledging it. And because your parents might not even be alive anymore, so you
Hmm.
can't really have that conversation. So what you can do is just recognize what you missed, and is there ways you can unlearn those things or get those things, maybe through therapy, maybe through whatever it may be. Like you necessarily, just because you have to go and talk to them and address this, doesn't necessarily mean you have to receive it from them
Totally.
at this time.
Absolutely. And like you say that well, because like sometimes we need that apology, and it's because something bad happened or bad things happen and we're trying to justify it. There's that betrayal piece. And so we want to, we want justice to serve, someone apologize.
Hmm.
And you're right, that may not be possible or may not even be necessary. But I think the more important place to come from, as you're saying, is that self-awareness of moving forward, like how does the lack of having that kind of a relationship from my dad, or maybe even that really good thing my dad did, how does those bad and good things show up today in my relationship with my partner, with my friends, who, you know, those important people in our circles? Because we do portray lots of those influences from whether we want to shake
Mm-hmm.
them out or not as kids. And again, we grow up and then we wonder why we still have addictions and domestic violence, because these are the
Mm-hmm.
things that were shown in homes and taught indirectly and not talked about. And we have a ways to go with that.
Yeah, and the thing is, both two things can be true, right? Just because you say like, "Oh, I didn't get this from my mom or dad," doesn't invalidate the things you did get,
Yeah.
right? And that goes back to that perfect person. No one is a perfect person in this world. Like there just is no one. And again, I think when you're more accepting and empathetic of the journey they went through, right? I mean, there's times where working through like therapy, I was like resentful. Like, what the hell? Why did my mom do this? Why did my dad do that? Like these things came up, but then it was also like, this is just what they knew at the time, right? There wasn't, I mean, unless of course, unfortunately, there are times where parents might do these things with evil intent. That I've seen that happen, unfortunately, too. But for my situation, there was not evil intent
Yeah.
here. It was just kind of what they knew, and just given the situation, like the divorce, that's just kind of what they had to do. Again, doesn't make it okay. I'm not just saying, oh, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
It was a big deal, but at the same time, I'm kind of taking it based on what they were doing at that time and how they were operating, given the situation.
Totally. You have a lot of empathy, and I think that is not something that everyone out there has. And I think that's like a superpower that you should be proud of, because you can sit here and be in this place you're in, going through the things you have, and have a lot of understanding and seeing from other angles. And it's very clear that you've been on this journey of self-awareness and doing this work, because I don't sense anger or resentment. I sense a lot of curiosity coming from you, which is, I think, really big.
Well,
I think that's amazing.
yeah. Yeah, and just to go to that, does it come up like here and there, like flashes of it? Of course it does. You know, I might be watching like, you know, a TV show or like a movie, and it's like really getting to me emotionally, and I see like, again, the perfect family, but a family
Yeah.
of like a young boy and a mom, and the dad's like showing the boy stuff. Then there are those moments that here and there, like again, it's not as intense as it used to be, but it still comes like,
Totally.
oh
Yeah.
man, I wish I had that too. But it's not, like I said, it's not as intense. But that's the thing, right? Like it's an ongoing journey. Just because you heal doesn't mean you'll never experience these things again. You might not experience it to that same intensity, but it's still going to be there. And I think it's going to be a part of my life for forever. But that is also, like you said, that empathy side, that understanding side. And like, that's when you become self-aware. Like, why am I feeling this way? What can I do to, the other thing with self-awareness is just because you feel something doesn't necessarily mean you have to deal with it right then and there.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to let it wash over you and
Yeah.
just let it be.
Yeah. You know, and I think even what I hear you saying, and you kind of mentioned it earlier too, is sometimes we are seeking validation, and whatever our truth is, our parents or our siblings or loved ones may not agree with it. And it's hard for them to then validate us, because people think that if I validate you, that means I'm agreeing with you. And those are two different things. Your mom doesn't have to agree with your side of the story, because she also experienced heartache and lots of, I'm sure, hardships going through divorce at that time in particular as a Punjabi woman. Like, that's just, divorce doesn't happen in our community. So all that stigma she has to fight and deal with, but she's still trying to be the best mom possible to you. Your dad thinks he's doing the best thing, and maybe they could have done better, all those things. But there's this like thing that I think sometimes that helps us deal with it is when we get validated, or someone hears and sees us and says, oh, you're in pain. Oh, that's a hard time for you. I'm sorry that that's happening. And they don't have to agree with the pain we're experiencing. They don't have to ever have gone through the pain we're experiencing. And I think we miss that sometimes because we, again, want to protect our family, our stories, and say, but I did this for you instead. You know, I bought you all those things instead. And, you know, I think it's just, as humans, we can probably get better at, we don't have to agree with someone. We have to learn how to validate people and help a human out and help them feel a little bit better for feeling shitty about something that happened, you know?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's really, and I think that's why it makes it so difficult for people in our community to even come to some family members because they're gonna just say, "Oh, like, come on, be grateful." You can be grateful and also acknowledge that things need to get better, right? It's just
Yeah.
one of those things. I could be grateful that I'm in a box, right? And I have a roof, like I'm not gonna get rained on today. But at the same time, okay, oh shit, I need to like do something about the situation, right? So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
two things can be true. I can't pinpoint it, but I do remember people saying that to me too. Like, yeah, your dad wasn't home, but your mom was great. I'm like, yeah, and then looking back on it now, why can't both be true? Why can't my mom be great and also know that, hey, my dad's not home? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So
yeah.
it's hard for people to. I think it's like a protective mechanism that a lot of people just have for themselves,
Yeah.
so they project that onto others as well.
Yeah, like super positive or the super skeptic. There's like this spectrum, and then it's like, where do we find the balance in between of you can have good and bad together? And it's really
Yeah.
like, yeah, what do we make of it? So I just want to talk a little bit more about you guys and you dudes. We talked a little bit about finding happiness and success, and sometimes we get this wrong image of material things. And you even talked about working hard, really that hustle mentality to get far and all that. Like,
hmm
I'm curious, how can our South Asian men redefine that success, like what it means to be success and including mental and emotional well-being? Like, what do you think it would take to redefine that?
I think really look at like what length you're going to achieve the success, right? So, there's a period in time for me where I was just downing, like, I mean, I still drink energy drinks and coffee, but there was a point where I was like, oh, okay, I don't have time to sleep. I need to like get up and do this stuff. So I'm going to consume more coffee. I want to have more energy drinks. But then, like when I was done work for the day, I'd be really in a pissy mood. I'd be miserable. So I was like, you know, looking at it, like, is this really worth it? Like, is what I'm trying to achieve really worth it? And not gonna lie, when that first happened, another voice came in my head, like, Sunny, shut up, man up, like, you can do this. So a lot of that's coming, but I think now, as I like even look on my journey and just for everyone in general, like, yeah, look at what's that finish line really gonna get you? Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you might make more money, that's great, but at what expense like are you willing to sacrifice your relationships, family, your health, your personal health, right? At what point you gotta look at all those signs. Like, are you like working so hard on the weekdays and then when the weekend comes you're getting drunk out of your mind because you're trying to like cool down and calm down, and like
And
how
also,
are you
you
in your
deserve
personal life?
it because we always say, "Oh, I deserve
Yeah,
it. I
that's
deserve it."
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think like look at other aspects and just know that, we're not robots. Like, and I think like getting that belief out of your mindset that, hey, I just need to work harder or I'm just too weak. Maybe that's why I can't do this. Because believe me, I had it and I still have flash of it that comes in my mind and I tell that voice, shut up, I don't need you. So I think it's like shedding that belief, but just evaluate aspects of your life. And don't get me wrong, there's going to be periods of time, or like they like to call seasons of your life where you're grinding. Like I know for me, when I'm doing like workshops, like 3, 4 weeks leading up to it, that's all I'm focused on. Like I'm so into it and I love doing it. But there's also like, if I did that like every single month, I would be burnt out. I'd be miserable. I'd probably end up drinking more. I'd probably like consume more caffeine. I probably eat bad. So see, those are signs right there, right?
Yeah.
And one could say, "Oh, Sonny, that means you can't handle it." Well, yeah, my body's gonna give out, and I wanna be happy. Like I wanna, show up for my wife and all my family and friends the best way possible. And if I'm doing all these things, it's just not gonna be sustainable, right? So you need to evaluate other aspects of your life when you are working hard. I'm not saying don't be ambitious. Like I'm an
Yeah.
ambitious person. I got a couple like income streams and a couple jobs, a couple projects I work on. I do all these things, but I also manage it to a point where I don't want it to interfere with my personal life. So I would say start there.
So that's, I like that. What would you say to that other person that would then say, "Oh, well, that's easy for you. You have flexibility in your life to take it easy. I got to work. I got to make money." And there's probably so many other things attached to that. I got to
hmm
prove to my in-laws. I got to prove to this person, that person, all these sorts of things that, people say that for. But when you hear dudes and guys talking like that about, "Well, I gotta keep grinding. That's important," or "I love grinding. I love doing that." What kind of conversations are coming up in your circle about that, or what do you think to that?
Well, I'll start from the just in the end there. So love grinding thing. Anything, I was having this conversation with someone earlier last week, and like even the things we love most, they can burn us out. Like I was just telling you, I think before we started recording that this past month I've had so many social activities, and it like literally burnt me out. And it was fun. It was fun hanging out with all these different people. So just know, even if you love this grind, it is gonna and can burn you out if you don't manage it properly. And in terms of like, you have to do all these certain things. Just know that something will suffer. Something will suffer when you are doing these things. And if you're willing to pay that price, that's your life. Everyone has their own, whatever they want to do in their life, that's theirs. I'm not saying my way is the right way. I'm just saying that if you want to have a good balance in your life and you don't want to be, relying on alcohol and caffeine, like overall, like consuming caffeine and then showing up in your personal life in a moody way and just being exhausted, burnt out, like these things are going to happen to you. And if you're willing to continue doing that, that's fine. And it could also be like maybe you're just in a season of life where you have to work. That's different.
Yeah, it's situational. It's like, next 6 months, got a new promotion, got to work my ass off and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
I hear sometimes from where I'm sitting, and I don't know everything, but from what I'm seeing and observing and hearing tidbits from some of the, guys in my life, I don't know if they know that it's okay and they have the permission to take it easy for a second, recognize these signs even because they're so go, go, go. But then you start to hear the way that they're coping is dark talk, like suicidal thoughts, or what's the point of me even being here? Am I even making a difference? Self-harm, harming themselves. Drugs and alcohol is one form of self-harm, but hurting themselves in other ways. This self-worth theme is growing more and more of like, oh, I'm not contributing. I'm not enough for my partner. I'm not enough for my family. Maybe they're the only son and they're supposed to take their parents on and they can't, there's like all these sorts of reasons that are leading to this feeling of, do I want to kill myself or do I want to kill the problems in my life? And I'm curious, like if you're hearing that talk, because I'm hearing that.
Yeah, I know. Firstly, I'd say like if anyone listening to that is experiencing that, reach out to me and, reach out. There's like a lot of like, suicide line, and I'm sure we can like add resources once it's done recording.
Yeah, we will. Yeah.
Fortunately in my circle, I haven't got to that extent, but I do have a lot of people that are burnt out. I've had clients that have got to that point. And it's just, I think now going back to what we've been talking about, it's also, they don't know any different, right? I think there's just this perception of like, my dad did it. This is what a man does. He's supposed to provide. This is just what he's supposed to keep doing. And it's a necessary thing. Like I remember I was talking to someone and I just said, I said straight up to them, like, hey, you look so different than you did like 5-6 years ago. Like, you look a lot older, right? And
yeah.
He's just like, yeah, that's the price you have to pay to be successful. And I'm just, oh my God, I was like, should I really engage in this conversation and go all out? Or I was like, okay, yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's the other problem I had when I first became a coach was it's very hard for me to not put my like mindset and beliefs on other people. Now I kind of just stay back unless they ask me. If they ask me, then oh man, I'll talk all night. But now I don't really. If someone like says something like, "Oh, I'm so stressed out. I need to have a drink," I'm not gonna be like, "No, man, that's not good for you. Do it properly." Like I'll stay away from that, right? Yeah, I think it's that mindset too. Like the household, like this is what you need to do. You have to do it. And again, it goes back to if I go and tell everyone around me, "Hey, I'm really struggling with my mental health," that stigma. No, you're just too weak. You can't handle it, right? So, I don't think you need to. That's the other thing I tell people. Like when you're ready to be vulnerable and talk about what you're going through, you don't have to announce it to the whole world. I mean, the more people you tell, the more authentic you feel. But again, it's not a race. Like when I got help for the first time, I didn't I didn't announce it on my Instagram. I told only a select few people. I told like 2 or 3 people. And then slowly over time where I became comfortable really opening up to more people, now every single person in my family, my friends know I've gone to therapy. Before they didn't. So just, I think that's also too, like if you are struggling in that situation, you don't have to tell everyone. You can, a lot of these counselors, and even like if you come to me as a coach, it's all confidential stuff. I'm not going to go tell anyone. They're not going to tell anyone. So I think it's also knowing that you don't have to tell everyone if you're struggling. it's empowering for sure, but you don't have to worry about that yet. Like sometimes, even for me, like sometimes when I'm dealing with things, I'll share some of it as I'm going through it. But other things, I'm just like, I'm so immersed in this as a human. I'm not ready to like talk about it yet because I'm still kind of dealing with it. Once I'm done dealing with it, then I have like a different perspective, right? So same
Yeah.
thing with you. You could be like going through something. You don't need to tell people around you yet. So I think it's also that like
I agree with you. I just want to make it clear, though, that if they're listening and there's someone that we care about that is talking along the lines or being clear about suicide and self-harm, like we do have to find a way to step in and help with that, because
yeah.
that's a red flag that they
Mhm.
may not be able to manage themselves. And like I think going back to the avoiding difficult conversation, when people are talking about suicide, self-harm, I know from my practice of learning, it's very clear, like, are you telling me you're going to kill yourself? And do you have a
Right.
plan? There's ways to go through that. But those two questions help us figure out, are people trying to kill the problems in their life for themselves? As a community, we can be a little over dramatic when we are upset, right? Oh, fuck my life, hate my life, going to kill myself. Sometimes we say
Yeah.
those things, but I don't necessarily think that's what's happening when I'm hearing from a lot of guys from our community that are sharing their bits and pieces of their mental health. So if you're getting there as a guy or as a person, they reach out to Sunny, reach out to me. There are lines, there are
Mhm.
people, but you got to tell someone, especially if you don't want the outcome to be killing yourself, right? Like, I think there are ways that we can work around that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there is a point if someone reaches that point, it's not going to just be like self-talk or go watch a motivational video or, like go work out or go get a massage. Like those things, they're beyond that. I know for me, I think one of the greatest gifts I've ever got in this life is going to therapy because it really just changed who I am as a person. And I think I don't know what kind of Sunny I would be
Yeah.
if I didn't go to therapy. So just talking to someone and it's truly life changing.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. It warms my heart when I hear our guys talking about therapy. What would you say to anyone listening out there that's like, oh, I love that for you, man, but not for me? Like, what would
Yeah.
you say to them?
Like I was also like telling someone about should you go to a friend or a therapist, right? I would say it's better talking to someone than no one at all, right? So if the option is I'm gonna keep this to myself or I'm gonna talk to a friend, go talk to that friend. Even if someone wants to talk about something and they want to have a few drinks, they want to smoke weed, whatever. If that's gonna help them open up, within reason, of course.
Yeah.
But if that's gonna help them open up, go and talk to them. Like I would be willing to go talk to someone like that too if that's gonna help ease them. But it has its limitations, right? Because the thing is with friends and family, again, I'm talking about trusted ones and ones that want to help you. They're gonna have some bias.
Yes.
They have something in it, right? Like if you came to me and I had to tell you something that's really hard, but it's gonna help you. Like if I say like, hey Karen, like I think your dad is not treating you well, your husband's not treating you well. You might be like, screw you, Sonny, I'm never talking
Yeah.
again. See you later.
Yeah.
Therapist says that to you. You might get annoyed and stuff, but they have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
They're not your friend. They're not your family. So they have a more objective opinion. Of course,
Right.
we're professionals, right? So I would say that. And also know that it takes some time to get like a therapist you're comfortable with and it's okay to change around. And no, it's a no judgment zone. Like you can go as deep as you want in the conversations. It's kind of like a swimming pool. You want to go to the deep end? Go ahead. If you don't, just, stand in the pool like I do. Like, I don't know how to swim, so I just stand
There
in the
you
pool
go.
and
Or
like
just dip your feet in. Yeah, just get your
yeah,
feet wet. Yeah.
yeah. So that's the thing. I think the other thing people are scared of, like, oh my God, I'm gonna go to the therapist. They're gonna interrogate me. They're gonna ask me this, and that. No, you actually control the tone of the conversation, and if at any time you feel uncomfortable, and you can stop it, right? So it takes some time. Like I know for me in the first session, it was a little weird. Like I'm like, why is this guy bringing up my childhood? Like what the hell? This is
Yeah,
weird.
I didn't
But
I'm talking about work.
yeah. But I was still curious to go because I was like, it was kind of like that defense mechanism. I'm like, this guy's weird. Why is he bringing up my childhood? But there's some part of me was like, I think what he's talking about will help me, so I'm gonna go. Right. So just know it's a process, right? Like
totally. Therapy can be like a massage for your feelings. Sometimes massages feel nice when you leave, and I think when someone is asking you questions about you, it's again, you're being seen, you're being heard in a way that normally you wouldn't. And we protect our loved ones. We only tell them, how much we think they can handle. We don't tell them everything because we don't want them to like be so worried about us. But like you said, the therapist, they're getting paid to be there. So there's no need to protect them. And they're going to pull it out of us anyway. They can, especially the really good ones, they know how to get to where you're trying to not go. But you do decide when you'll go there. That's the thing. And I think, it's really worth too, being people of color, when we do look at therapy, it's more than okay, and maybe even, I think, important to try to find someone that is racialized, because
I agree.
My experience of growing up, going to therapy, working in that, and then recently going to, for the first time, a racialized therapist that I'm seeing right now, I'm being seen in a way that, no offense, but like white therapists just, they wouldn't know how to see me. They would mean well and they're great and they would offer me great strategies, but they really couldn't see that side of me that this Punjabi therapist sitting before me can, and the place that she can meet me at is very different. So, I think we have a choice, or if we're interested in it, try to find someone that is of color that can maybe understand you a little bit better. And you said you agree to that.
Yeah, because actually the therapist I talked to when I initially went was a white therapist, and I am grateful for the experience because he's the one that introduced inner child work to me, and I'm grateful for that. But the one I currently have is a brown therapist, and she understands things in such a different way that I don't think, in a more like, in the context of, our culture and just like the situations we go through, she understands it full well. So it makes such a huge difference.
Yeah.
But I also want to add, I have seen some people in our community who do prefer a non-South Asian therapist.
Yeah.
Well, again, I'm just saying that, but I think a majority of the times it is the benefit of having someone in your background, because they just understand the dynamics, the living situation, in-laws, expectations. Like, someone in another race might not understand that.
Totally. Yeah. Okay. What message? I'm going to ask you, because I have a couple more questions. I know it's like getting late. I want to know a little bit more about like what message. I know you've had a few messages for our community, for our guys, which I've been, I've appreciated. What message would you have for the South Asian men struggling with their mental health right now? What would you want to say to them out there?
Just know that you're not alone. We all struggle, and this image of having it all together and talking about emotions as being weak, it really isn't weak, because if you're preserving the so-called perfect image, but there's other aspects of your life that are like falling apart, I think that's a sign in itself that, you need to get help. It's out there. And the other thing is, it's so accessible. As I mentioned, there's so much help out there. And like I was saying earlier, you don't need to tell everyone that you're getting help. You don't have to tell your family. You don't have to tell your cousins, your friends. Just step out and do it for yourself. And not only will you feel better, but you're going to get to discover who you really wanted to be all along, right? Like in terms of interest, instead of in terms of passion, personality, like I was mentioning, that goofy and funny version of me. I thought that was weird and I shouldn't act like that. But through therapy, I recognize that, hey, this is who I am. And that's okay if that's who I am, right? Because I was told like, oh yeah, don't act that way for whatever reason. But I think like it's just knowing that when you go to these spaces to get this help, obviously go to someone who's trustworthy, go to someone who won't judge you. And sometimes that's hard to determine. So what I always tell people, like if you want to go to someone in your friends or family circle, go to someone who has shared their struggles, right? Like if someone came to me, I would never laugh at them about what they're going through, because I've openly shared my own stories. And similar for me, when I opened up when I was younger, I had a cousin who talked about struggles, went to him, same thing. He didn't really say, like, it wasn't like, oh, don't be a wimp and stuff. So go to proper people. And if you don't have them in your family and friend circle, go get therapy. And again, it's confidential. It's anonymous. They won't judge you.
It can be affordable. There's lots that work on sliding scale. So some work on how much you make. So you could pay next to nothing. Some are already free. Some you can get through work. So there is a way for those of us that can afford it. There is a way to still get that, right?
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is this: you'll live a more fuller life in terms of just you'll show up. I think that's the other thing people don't realize. It's not so much like you're dealing with like your emotions, but if you're able to go to therapy and talk about these things and work through them, you're gonna have more motivation in your work. And I know that might sound counterintuitive, like what the hell? I'm already working so much, but you're just going to be sharper. You're going to be more effective in the work that you do within reason. Obviously, you don't want to be working like now saying, "Oh, I can work 120 hours or whatever." But
No.
you're going to show up differently in just being more motivated in life, and you'll show up better in your relationships, in your, in just anything and everything in your life. You'll show up differently because I really do think if we experience trauma, if we have childhood issues, or whatever, we have something going on, it really suppresses who we really are as a
Yeah.
person. And it really takes away from that authentic person that we have inside us. And you can really unlock all that when you go do this work.
It's like playing a video game. It's like going to a different level and
Mm-hmm.
upgrading. And I think if I could even add to that, sometimes whether it's our guys or just people in our community, like when we look at ourselves and individually, we have so many problems, relationship, addictions, financial, all sorts of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then when we can look at things, when we take care of ourselves, we can actually step outside of ourselves and look at it from the big picture, like the bird's eye view. And that brings us as a collective. And that's being healthy and thriving. And it's us
Mm-hmm.
as a community supporting each other. It's not just me about myself. It's me also giving back to my community. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's really important for our guys to understand that this ancestry history that so many of us don't know about, part of where we're at with these significant mental health issues or these struggles and drinking, these addictions, again, has to do with our story of where we came from, where our parents came from, their parents came from. The motherland has a lot of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And that does not go away after there's significant amount of generations before we're going to see that cleanse through us. And so
Yeah.
we could individually be, driving our car thinking I'm a piece of shit, I'm a shitty guy, I'm a shitty person, I hate myself, whatever our dialogue is. But it's not just coming from you, it's coming from what's been passed down to you. So you're carrying so much more than is just your own story, I guess I'm trying to say. And we can't just deal with that on our own. Like it's just not possible.
That's a
One
good way of putting
person,
it.
like we need a lot of help going through that.
Yeah, no, certainly you certainly can't do it alone. And I think that's, we're going back to like what this community is really about is everyone, there are people that help each other out, which is great. But then it's just when it comes to mental health, it's like, oh, you're on your own, right? Because we don't really talk about it.
Because if you can't see it, then it doesn't exist. So it's weird.
Yeah. But I think that's what it is, right? If you look at any kind of profession in life, everyone has a team, right? Like if you look at sports example, Michael Jordan, he had a coach, Tim Grover, that was his coach, right? Michael Jordan didn't do it alone. He had a team around him, right? So just think of it that way too. Have a team for your life, not like goal wise or like work wise, but have a team of like, okay, this is the person I can go to when I'm feeling down or I need someone to talk to. And that's why I think mentors are important too. Like I have a mentor as well, and it's just like having like that talk with him. Like he's 10 years into the future for me.
Yeah.
So I'm able to like talk to him.
You're
like,
the
hey,
past,
I'm going through this.
he's the future. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm able to like talk about these things. I'm like, hey, I'm in my coaching journey. I'm in this year. What were you experiencing in this year? Like, what can I, like, so it's getting that perspective.
Yeah.
And I can't do that alone. I mean, could I like sit there and research all day, all night long? Maybe I could, but why do it when we could have these people around us that can be like our team?
Yeah. And, like we come from a culture where it takes a village,
Mm-hmm.
That mentality came from our community. And so somehow along the way, we lose that village mentality when we lose a bit of ourselves. We can't be children.
Mm-hmm.
We can't have our personalities. We can't do these things. And then we just become this isolated person versus don't forget where we came from. We came from a village where people would have your back in all sorts of ways. So anything that you wish we talked about or that I asked or that you brought back, or maybe you want to go back and clarify?
I think just, for the guys in particular, like it, there is this image we need to work hard and make money and that's all great and stuff. But, go back to your childhood and think of like the things that used to make you happy, right? And again, you don't have to do what I did where I bought like Yu-Gi-Oh, Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon cards. That's up to you. If you want to do that, you can. But just, think of those moments, think of those times where you were so happy, it was so like joyful. Like, what can you do in today's life to do that? And again, it doesn't have to be like a this big trip and stuff, or like buying this huge, like, it doesn't have to be about money, but I think to get to that level, I would recommend doing a lot of inner work, being more self-aware, not using alcohol or drugs, and just thinking of things that would really make you happy. Like, I know for me, as I was going through the years, play like basketball, and like, oh my God, this is so fun. Or I would do, like, at places, they have like those pits that you can go into.
Yeah. The ball
Yeah,
pits and yeah.
yeah. So before I started doing all this inner child work, I remember there was one time I went in with my nephew, and I guess it was deemed okay because I'm going in and playing with him, right?
Yeah.
But after, I felt like, holy shit, like, was I drunk or something? Because that felt amazing. Because
Yeah.
it was like that. It was like that joy, right? So just, again, you don't have to do like these childlike things. If you want, you can, but explore and look at things that will make you happy. Just, and embrace that
Yeah.
happiness. Embrace that, like, oh my God, I'm so joyful, without drinking,
Yeah.
without smoking, right? Like, find these natural things you can do, and really just, like, again, it goes back to that inner work and figuring out what you as a person, as an individual, love to do. And honestly, these things will make you happier than any car or any house, any kind of job will. Like, that inner
Yeah.
happiness that you can gain from just being true to what makes you happy is so, like, yeah, it's so underrated.
It is underrated. And it's also so well said by you. You're talking about less external measures, the fancy stuff that we think we need us, but going back to, again, finding our innocence, finding the things that you're saying that brought us joy, all those things can contribute to quality of life. And I think that is very well said. And honestly, I would encourage people after this to go back and think, yeah, what did I love doing as a kid? And my challenge would be to not go and buy something like, whether it's playing that basketball or, that old video game or going for a walk or whatever things we did when we were little, like you're saying, that brought us safety, brought us joy. I think it's interesting if we go and do a task like that, it hits all of our chemical, the whole daily dose, dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, and serotonin, right? So this is our chemical center in our brain, and the drinking and the drugs helps us go to that pleasure center. But then eventually the pleasure wears off because we're not drunk anymore. We're not high anymore. But when we go find joy, things like going on that roller coaster, those things that give us all these feelings, that's what you're saying. We're tapping into that chemical center of our brain to feel those things again that made us exciting, to run in the field. And I hear you saying, like, go back and find those things again to get your brain to create those levels versus the drugs or the $100,000 car.
Say be careful, because obviously now that we're older, we can't do the things we used to do. So I remember there was one time I was like going down. It was like there's grass there and there's leaves, and I remember as a kid I used to like jump in on the grass, like full body and down. I did that a few months ago, and I felt good. And after, like, oh shit, I think I got a bruise on my back. But
yeah, you probably did.
So you gotta be careful, right? Like, as we're
Yeah.
doing these things, they're like, I remember I was jumping on a trampoline with like my nephews, and I was loving it as a kid. And then after, I was like, oh damn, I jumped too fast. My knee kind of feels
Yeah.
weird. So there might be things like that happen, but honestly, you'll
The
still
monkey
feel
bars,
good.
yeah. We're not immortal like we were when I know, totally. When you're getting old when you make sound effects as you sit down or bend or whatever. So yeah, absolutely. But that's why stretching is important. That's, you're not old, just stretch, they say. So okay,
Sure.
so Lee, a call to action. What is one thing if it's only one thing our listeners take today, what would you hope that one thing would be?
One thing. Wow, that's fast, man, because we covered a lot of things. I guess maybe I'll do it in the sense of like a statement or a quote. I would say you are worthy enough to get help and live an authentic life.
I love it. If people want to follow you, where can they find you, and what are the things they can find? Because you offer so many resources.
Yeah, for sure. So main area is Instagram. It's Sunny C Coaching. So Sunny C Coaching. I post basically every day. There's reels. I post on my stories every day, and lately I've been posting a lot of like personal stuff as well. So just kind of like similar to like a vlog kind of thing, because I really want to. Again, this was from my mentor. He told me incorporate more of your personal life on your Instagram. So I've been doing that a lot lately. And I do like anonymous Q&As because I know a lot of the stuff I talk about sometimes not easy to come forth. And then the podcast I also do every Thursday. It's the South Asian Healing Podcast. It's on like all the platforms, just like yours. And I also offer group coaching. So, if couples are struggling with like communication, talking about emotions, or even standing up for themselves, if they have a girlfriend or a wife and then the family's interfering, I help with that. I also help them with like if there's daughter-in-law expectations. So there's a lot of these things that I really help with. But the main thing is like helping people have these difficult conversations with family members. But if you kind of go deeper into that, really it's about building that confidence in you and really understanding why you should live life a certain way, right? Because obviously, if you look at my story and what I've discussed today, living this authentic life, embracing, this goofy side, embracing this inner child stuff, it all started because I'm willing to have these conversations with other people. And if someone like said to me like, "Oh, why are you acting that way? Why are you, like, why are you going up and talking about this on Instagram?" If I didn't have this skill set to have these conversations with people and be confident in myself, then all of this wouldn't exist, right? So I think like having these conversations really is life changing and it can help you live that authentic life. So I really help people with that. And I even help with the confidence building, right? So if they don't know where to start in terms of like, okay, I wanna do some great things in my life, but I don't know. My mom and dad are telling me to do this. So we really work on like beliefs and values and passions and like
Mm-hmm.
kind of building that together. And then like men's mental health. I do have some men. Some men are still very resistant. So a lot of the men are referrals from like females in their life, whether that be like a cousin, a sister, a wife, a girlfriend, where they'll come to me and we'll talk about like their mental health. Want to help out as much as I can.
That's great. I think we'll also post this, all the resources that you offer,
Mhm.
so people have a chance to catch that then. And honestly, again, a lot of what I hear is we lose our values and our beliefs along the way, and you're just helping people go back and revisit those, and maybe catch up and get some new ones or update them. But when we don't have our
Update them.
values to go back to,
Mhm.
we don't know who we are, and we don't know how to respond in moments, and lose our voice and all sorts of things. And I think that's a really important thing that I think many of us are taught in our communities and all the communities growing up, and along the way, they go wayside. So that's lovely that you help people, ground themselves and go back to, what are the things that matter? What are the rules of my life that I want to make sure I follow? And I think that's really important. So we'll post your info when your episode comes out. Anything else anything else on your mind or anything else for you before we wrap up?
Yeah, just two things. So I'll just add to like what you're saying about values and beliefs, right? So I think the other thing is I think for the most part people know that they need to stand up for themselves, right? Like if someone's disrespecting them, I think everyone knows that. But the fact that them believing it and not believing it, it makes a huge difference, right? So if I tell you, hey Karen, like, the way the way your cousin spoke to you was really disrespectful. Logically that's true, but do you know and do you consider that, hey, I'm worthy enough to stand up for myself? That's the difference, right? So I can teach every single person of how to have tough conversations, but the deeper work that we do is helping them rebuild or establish like that confidence inside, and
Yeah.
also unlearning a lot of things they've been told. One thing I didn't really bring up thing today that I forgot was like I was told a lot that I was stupid. I was stupid. I was stupid. So I had to unlearn that. So there's a lot of things that a lot of people I work with have been told. So I help them unlearn that. So then they feel worthy of standing up for themselves. Because yes, you can have a tough conversation, but you're gonna feel like crap after. You're gonna feel so guilty. You're gonna almost apologize to the person after.
Yeah.
I actually did that once. So I did stand for myself in one situation, but I wasn't to the point where I felt worthy enough for it. Next day I was like, hey, I'm sorry if I overreacted the next day, and then boom, ruined. So
Yeah.
you have
Oh,
to
yeah.
inside you have to believe that you are worthy of it. Logically we all know, but inside is there enough conviction in your mind, in your heart, that hey, the way the person treated me is not right, I need to stand up for myself? Or is it, oh, I should stand up for myself because Sunny told me to? There's a difference
Yeah.
there. So that's where I help people really build that inner belief and inner, that inner self-esteem, that self-love. Because if you have that love, if you respect yourself, you won't let people treat you a certain way.
And you don't need to then wonder what other people will think. because what matters is you know what you think. And I think maybe that's the answer to why we look to what other people will think, because we don't really know. We don't have that self-confidence. We don't have that worth, like you're saying, that, you know, you help people build up. So I think that's important stuff you're doing over there. So how does your wife feel about all this?
She's really supportive. You know, I remember when I first started the journey, you know, there was a little bit of fear, like, oh my God, like you're gonna be different now. We're gonna have more arguments and fights. Because again, I was someone who was taught to like hold things in, don't express yourself, right? So I had to unlearn a lot of that. And you know, on the surface, it did look like we're gonna have more arguments because now I start to express myself. So there was a little like, I guess, uneasiness of like, oh no, Sunny's gonna be so different now. Like, how are we gonna get through this? You know, fortunately we did. She went along that ride with me, and you know, she's an advocate of mental health too. Not to the extent I am, but she supports me in all this. She grows with me. So honestly, like it's become like it's kind of like we've evolved together as a couple.
That's really good. That's really big. You had mentioned you had a couple of other things, so I just want to make sure you get a chance to say that too.
I also offer group coaching as well if the number permits. I've extended a few men's group coaching sessions, but never really get people showing up. Right, so
don't stop, don't give up. People will. Yeah. You know, just every time. I think for some people too, it's like, feel you've been this certain way for so many years, and it's like, how do I unlearn all this? And I think the simplest way that it was taught to me is like, our brains are absolutely built to be rebuilt. So the neural pathways, you can build new neural pathways that go back and forth. So from point A to point B, when I do one thing and then this other thing happens, that's sort of how our brain learns. But it can, through consistency, you know, repetition. Like you teach people, like, you know, inner dialogue, even changing how being called stupid all your life, and how do you stop believing that or stop saying that in your head. And so the brain has the ability to do it. I think it's the willpower, and you're there to help teach the skill. So those things come along with it, but it is possible. Just wanted to reiterate, be your spokesperson or your commercial or something there, that it is possible. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for spending time with me today. I want to thank you for bearing through the technology issues we were having together.
We got through it.
We did, right? We stuck it through. And I just really want to thank you for what you're doing. I think it takes a lot to want to invite our guys out there to have conversations that, you know, end on a good note, end in healing, and in growing and being healthy. These conversations are door openers, you know, so for people listening today, I just, you know, maybe we can think about like, what will it take for you the next time you are hanging out with your friends or your cousins, or, you know, you're at a reception, wherever you are. And what will it take to tell these people that are so important to you, that you love spending time with, that you're not okay? I think we got to work backwards from that, because when we're not okay, we need to be able to get it out. Sunny's got a platform. If you're not okay, you can go and visit that, go and talk to him. He's there. I'm available as well. But these conversations are just door openers. We're just getting started. So if you want to contribute to this conversation, if you want to add to what Sunny and I have talked about, you know where to find us. We hope you reach out. We appreciate when you guys reach out, because we're building a community that's for us. Apart from that, thank you for being here, my friend.
This is awesome. Like, I'm so grateful for this opportunity and allowing me to share my story.